So, the 808. All of those overtones, I want those to kind of spread out and get smushy and fill up a lot of space. So that's going to be the stuff that's over about 200 hertz. I'm going to grab a Fab Filter Pro Q3. I already had the parallel track set up. Look at me go. So that stuff. And first thing I want to do is spread it throughout the stereo field. Now the question is, do I want to blend this in parallel and create something that's a little bit more mid-rangey in the bass, or do I want to do this as a crossover? And I'm not sure. We'll find out. I don't hate that. I'm 50-50 on it. So let's throw this on as a crossover. We just take the same point, and we're going to switch this over to a high cut. And now what we have is the sub exclusively in the lows, and we have the upper tones now living in, no, I'm sorry, the sub exclusively in the center is what I meant to say, and the upper tones spread out. I think I want to adjust my crossover a little bit. I think I want to take this down a hair. And then same thing over here. Now, you might be thinking to yourself at this point, why not just use the imager by itself, because it has a crossover point? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's because I also want to take these midtones and I want to make them feel a little bit denser. So I'm going to use Radiator for that. It's a fun little saturator. You know, could be any number of things. It's kind of a cool sound. Huh. That's kind of neat. Woo, 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 woo. That sort of thing moving back and forth. We're going to take the stereo width down a hair. I do want a little bit of center information on this. Nice. Can also bring the midtones down just a little more. There we go. I'm bringing the midtones down because I just want to make sure that there's still that presence in the snare. So I'm not lowering it because I want to change the proportion of the 808. The 808 sounded great. It was just, it sounded a little too great. And the snare was kind of like, I'm small again. So let's say drill influence panned 808 are nice in an R&B song. You know, I haven't listened to enough drill music, but they definitely do some really interesting stuff. I remember listening to one record where there was a sample, and the sample was just on the left or on the right, something like that, which was definitely a unique take. Ugh. Anyway. Okay, quick little phase check. Definitely better phase when we don't mess with it. And now we're going to do a little EQ trick here. Although it doesn't need much of it, but sometimes when you have these very, very deep 808s, a really nice way to get a very full 808 and kick is to take the subs and roll off a little bit so that the kick almost sounds a little thin. And then you push the kick up a little bit. And you push the primary bass range around 150 to 200 hertz a little bit. So that the energy from, instead of it being like a wide kick sound, which is what we normally like to hear, it becomes sort of a thin forward kick sound, but then it gets cushioned by the 808. So the overall sound becomes very, very big. Doesn't always work. Keep in mind, with any kind of prescriptive technique like this, it doesn't always work. You try it, and when it works, it works. Sometimes there's a very counterintuitive thing that happens where your kick and your 808, you boost the sub on the kick, and that makes for a bigger sound. I don't know why, but sometimes it's that way. You're like, okay, there's a ton of 40 to 60 cycles in the 808. I add 40 to 60 cycles in the kick. That's the same frequency range. In theory, we're supposed to not do that, but it just makes the sound bigger. Don't know. So you notice that this kick starts to feel a little more cardboardy and two-dimensional when I do this. It's not a good sound for a kick by itself. The question is, how does it sound with the 808? Pretty good. You notice that kick sounds significantly bigger. And it doesn't feel like we're losing low end. Why?
Hey, man, I have a question.
What's your question?
So, the EQ move on the kick that you just did, it sounds great with the bass under it.
But how does it
Um,
sound when the kicks are just hitting in isolation?
I was just gonna ask you that. Would this be a case where you split the kicks off and then don't do that EQ move on the duplicated kick?
Well, let's try it. Let's see what happens.
Does my question even make sense?
It sure does, because the kick is not hitting with the 808 all the time, right? It's
Right.
hitting with the 808 sometimes. So if we take a line here and we delete the times where,
Exactly.
let's see, these are all hitting with. Yeah. How does this sound is the question. It's interesting. The question is, does it sound better than this? And the answer to that is, I don't know that it's making a tremendous difference within the moment. It sounds to me like if we're just paying attention to kicks only, yeah, I think the kick sounds a little bit better when we don't have that EQ in. But there is this sort of interesting thing that happens when we do have the EQ in, which is that we then start to desire the sub range, right? Because the sub range feels anemic, so we get more of that. There's tension. We want the sub range because we're not hearing enough of it. Then release, anytime we hear that 808 hit, it makes the 808 feel stronger. So, I don't actually have a clean and clear answer for this one in terms of what I prefer. I prefer them both for different reasons. I guess the question really is, what do you prefer? Do you
Uh,
have a preference?
I honestly, this is one of those ones where I think there is no right or wrong. It can go either way.
Yeah. Let's play it one
Um,
more time without. just to kind of and the real secret here is to feel it out, right? To try and hear it the way that the listening audience is going to hear it. Versus when I turn my brain off, I think I know which one I prefer. I like the one where it's EQ'd throughout. I don't know why.
I agree.
But yeah, if you were to ask me, like, so why? I'd be like, I don't know. Both of them make me want to turn the 808 up a little bit, though. I will say that. So I think let's start with the sub of the 808 and let's pull it up a couple dB. Down a hair. We're close. It should be just enough to feel really big, but not enough to eat the whole record alive. You know what? I'm going to pull it down back to here again, and if we want more lows overall, we'll figure that out when we have more stuff in. Okay, we have our foundation. Great. That's a really good start.